So last year I started an e-commerce brand for the first time after spending the last few years running a successful e-commerce ad agency and helping a lot of other businesses grow their sales. So after spending so much time in the trenches and really helping other brands reach 7 and 8 figures, I figured I also wanted to take a stab at the same thing. After all, it's not really the same while you help other people grow their business. It's very, very gratifying and you definitely get a big compensation out of it if you're successful. But at the end of the day, it's not something that you created from the ground up. And I definitely wanted to experience that for the first time, right? And really give myself a better creative outlet. And honestly, it's been a really interesting journey so far. And I think it's high time for me to impart some of my insights that I've learned with you guys, especially those of you who've been thinking about starting an e-commerce brand on your own as well. Maybe you saved up some capital and you're ready to invest into some inventory, or maybe you have just a really good idea for a product that you think will sell really well. Or you're already in this startup or beginning phase of your e-commerce brand and you're just looking for some extra advice and tips and basically like a second pair of eyes. So today I wanted to share 3 key things that I learned after starting my own e-commerce brand at 20 years old. And hopefully you guys can avoid some of my mistakes and learn from some of my lessons and really just shortcut some of the process, because I think at the end of the day, starting an e-commerce brand is a very daunting experience, especially if you've never done it before. Even someone like myself who's been in the trenches and helped a lot of e-commerce brands grow, it's not really the same as starting one from the ground up, right? Because if you already have a foundation and you're helping someone else build their business who's already had some sort of proof of concept, you're not really in control of new creative concepts. You're not in control of the types of products they're selling necessarily. You're just there as a tool for their growth, rather than actually creating something and bringing some of your vision to life. So it's a really, really interesting and different experience. And it's definitely, I would say it's actually a lot tougher than running my agency day to day. So hopefully I can alleviate some of that pain and learning curve for you guys and really help you guys turbocharge your startup e-commerce brand. But first, I think it's really helpful if I start off with some context as to why I wanted to start my own e-commerce brand for the first time. And then we'll move on to some of the challenges that I faced in the first few months, as well as some of the wins that I experienced. And then at the end, I'll talk about my new venture and why I'm so much more passionate about what I'm currently doing and how that very first step of starting my first e-commerce brand eventually led over to me finding something that I was truly, truly passionate about. Okay, so story time. Early 2021, it's the peak of my agency. I have a lot of clients, a lot of cool people that I'm working with, and overall, I'm just having a great time growing my agency. And I slowly built this client base through quite a bit of hard work, right? So I developed my own cold email and cold outreach system. I made sure that I nurtured a lot of my client relationships so that they could refer me to other clients. It was just the time of my life, right? I was having a lot of fun and everyone was winning, everyone was making money. And then came iOS 14. And I'm sure a lot of you guys know it's been difficult all around for a lot of people in the industry, myself included. It was definitely a time where you had to figure out a lot of stuff on the fly and really just implement solutions as fast as possible so that your clients' accounts didn't go by the wayside, or you had to do as much damage control as you could possibly do. And it didn't really stop us from delivering results for a lot of our clients. A lot of our client accounts were still doing pretty well throughout the whole thing, and we were able to manage pretty well for them. But then that actually got me thinking, right? There were a handful of clients that didn't really do so well throughout the whole iOS 14 thing. And a lot of my other clients, however, were able to pull their businesses together and were able to make the most out of the situation. And I thought to myself, why was that the case, right? Why are some businesses better equipped to, survive throughout the whole thing and other businesses don't really make it? Now, there's really no one correct answer to this, right? It could be a combination of their customer lifetime value and AOV, right? Maybe they just had better numbers to sustain marketing spend, right? And not have to, drop off their marketing spend by like half or something major like that. They were just able to survive better because they had a better customer base and they had better numbers in their business to support the situation. That was a part of it. Others just simply had better products and they simply built a longer term business. And that got me to start thinking, I also want something similar to that, right? I also want my own brand where I can be in full control of the situation. Even if there are situations like iOS 14, I want to be in the driver's seat. I also want it to be the person calling the shots and making the decisions, because yes, like being an external vendor, being an agency is fun and all, but a lot of your clients may or may not do so well, and a lot of it is out of your control, right? Like there's only so much that I can do as an agency, as a service provider, to make sure the business itself is able to sustain the spend levels throughout all this, data stuff, right? Throughout any sort of bigger issue in particular. And honestly, I was also getting a little bit bored of running the same process over and over, right? Like once you get a hang of which types of Facebook ads work and which ones don't, it starts to become very, very formulaic. And even if you start taking on different types of clients from different industries, like at one point I was not just taking on e-commerce brands, but I also took on a SaaS company. I also took on a sort of like an Airbnb type client as well. Basically, I was all over the place because I was in search of something that could be more fun than just your typical apparel company or something like that. So I guess what I was really looking for was a better creative outlet where I could really bring my own ideas to life and really execute on the stuff that I had in my head. And that also would be an extra plus because in my eyes, I could use that experience as an extra sort of portfolio booster under my belt, right? The fact that I'm also in the trenches building my own e-commerce brand and that I can really relate to and understand some of the founder struggles that a lot of my clients themselves are facing. I think putting myself in their shoes, in their position, would eventually become a really, really powerful tool for me and a really great selling point for my agency services as well. So all that together was sufficient reason for me to go ahead and start my own brand. Now, the niche that I had really identified as a place that had a lot of potential was the women's jewelry space, in particular, women's fine jewelry, right? So higher quality pieces that definitely last and stand the test of time, that are usually made from higher quality materials than stuff like stainless steel or just regular gold plating. And I saw potential in that space because I realized that women are now, especially modern women, are really, really style conscious, right? Especially the ones that are, they have something going on in their careers and they're doing relatively well for themselves. They want to look good, right? And they want to make a statement with their pieces. And the numbers checked out as well because jewelry tends to be a little bit more expensive, a little bit more of an investment than something like a t-shirt, for example. And if you really make the right connections and have the right suppliers, you can get your profit margins to really make sense for your business, right? It can be really, really lucrative as a venture. And there was really a multitude of other reasons as well as to why I hopped into it that I won't actually go into detail with through this video because it'll be way too long. I think that's a separate video topic for another day. But essentially I saw the potential and I wanted to jump into it. Now, one of the first things I did was to spend a lot of time on the website and a lot of time and budget on the content that we were creating. But after spending significant time and money on just having a pretty site and having the best photos and videos, I realized tip number one is to spend a lot of time on brand and really knowing who it is you're targeting, right? And this goes for whether you're doing a dropshipping store, so maybe not something that's super long term, maybe just a hot product in the short run, or if you're actually trying to start a long-term brand that can be sustained, right? In either case, I think nowadays it's really important to spend a lot of time thinking about brand, a lot of time thinking about what makes you different and what sets your products apart, as well as what types of customers that you want to attract, right? Because if you don't know those things and you're kind of just floating through it, hoping you can find your ideal customers and you're not really thinking about speaking in their language and stuff like that, it's going to be really hard to set yourself apart in such a competitive space like e-commerce, where nowadays there is more brands than you can count. Now that's something that I didn't do as much as I had hoped early on. I think I kind of just glossed over that and I didn't really get clear on what we stood for as a company. I didn't really attempt to paint much of a picture in terms of the story and how we got started. I didn't do much of documentation of the journey or anything like that. And to an extent, I couldn't really do much of that, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm a guy and I'm not some, woman in her late 20s, early 30s who's living in a big city and who's super cosmopolitan and educated and has very refined interests and stuff like that. At the end of the day, I'm not personally that persona. So I would have a much tougher time doing that. But what I could have done was really just focus on hiring other people that fit that sort of vibe and persona that I was going for and have them do the work. And that's not something, unfortunately, that I pay too much attention to. It was all about the numbers for me. It was all about, creating the best content possible, having the best looking ads, having the best looking product photos. But at the end of the day, all of that doesn't really matter. It doesn't really sell your product well if you can't genuinely connect with your customers and really build a brand that they'll remember without having to be spammed with cold traffic ads for the dozenth time, right? So it's something that you really should pay a lot of attention to, and you should definitely spend extra time on. It's just getting clear on your customers and getting clear on what differentiates you and your brand tone of voice. That way you don't have to piss away so much money on ad spend and having agencies create content for you and shoots and influencers and stuff like that. If you're very clear on what it is that sets you apart, it'll really just come through in every marketing tactic or strategy that you implement, right? Everything is really, really coherent and everyone knows what you're here to sell and why you're here, right? And I think that will save you a lot of money and effort in the long run. Tip number 2 is to hire contractors in the beginning. Yes, you don't want to hire people probably full-time right off the bat, right? So you want to hire talented freelancers and contractors, but you really want to make sure to vet them as closely as possible. And what I mean by this is they not only need to be smart, passionate people who are good at what they're doing, but they also need to fit to a certain extent the persona that you're trying to build for the brand as well, right? And this goes back to the whole thing that I mentioned earlier about hiring other people that sort of lived the lifestyle of the ideal customer for my jewelry brand. You definitely want to make sure that everyone from like a simple copywriter to your social media managers to influencers you partner with, they all have to fit a certain mold, right? They have to share a similar set of interests or a similar lifestyle with each other so that you can build a very, very coherent marketing message and it's very consistent, right? Everyone, it'll really resonate with your target demographic so that your target demographic really has something consistent that they're seeing from your brand on a daily basis. I think a lot of us, when we're going through the hiring process, it's very easy to fall into the natural trap of placing too much emphasis on the candidate's hard skills and just the experience they have under their belt and maybe looking at past work they've done for clients. But all of that is kind of irrelevant if they can't fit the vision that you're trying to paint for your brand, right? If they're not that type of person, they're gonna have difficulty no matter what creating work that is coherent with the brand tone that you're trying to put out. So the key takeaway here is to think a little bit more about company culture, think a little bit more about brand voice as well, as I mentioned, and just make sure the people that you're hiring, they all have this one thing in common. Maybe it's a little bit more intangible. Maybe it's something that you can't really quite put your finger on, but they just have to have those 1 or 2 qualities that are very, very important to your brand. And that way, all of your marketing output, all of the content that you put out, every piece of work that your contractors turn over to you makes sense in the context of other work, right? It really fits into a congruent whole. Now, my third and final tip is that if you're starting a long-term brand and not some dropshipping store you're gonna have for 2 or 3 months, you need to make sure that you're genuinely passionate about what it is you're selling and make sure that there's a niche fit, right? That there's actually room for your brand, considering the time and money investment that you're putting in. So what I really mean by this is that for me as a guy, like obviously I find the women's jewelry space interesting, but as I said, at the end of the day, I don't really live that type of lifestyle. And it ends up being that I have to outsource or delegate a lot of those tasks, like writing a simple blog post or coming up with a social media caption, right? Little things like that. Usually as a founder, you would be responsible for those things because you have the best understanding of the story that you're trying to put out there. Well, unfortunately for me, I had a general sense of that thing, but I just couldn't really execute on it because I'm not in that demographic. So yeah, it's doable if you're a founder that is selling something that isn't necessarily something that you personally use in your daily life. It's still possible to build a brand around that, but it's just gonna be significantly harder because with almost every little thing, you have to hand over the responsibility to someone else and let them take care of it and hope and pray that whatever output that they create fits into the bigger picture that you also had in mind for the company. So it ended up being that with the jewelry brand, although we did get some sales here and there and we had some short-term success, I eventually wanted to pass it off to other people that were more qualified to run the business and really focus on my men's jewelry brand, which I actually, live and breathe the lifestyle of and that I'm genuinely passionate about. And from that point on, it was a lot easier for me to stay focused on building the brand and really get excited about every new thing that was upcoming. I felt for the first time that I was actually in control of the brand vision, and I really knew what I wanted to create out of the brand, as well as the different types of products that I wanted to sell. And also with the key problem that we're trying to solve, I genuinely resonated with that problem, right? The fact that a lot of men's jewelry nowadays is either super overdone and gaudy and you have those like huge skull rings and stuff like that, just super obnoxious biker style stuff. Or you have the other side, which is like an attempt to be fine jewelry or iced out and flashy and stuff you can wear to clubs and parties and stuff like that. But those materials aren't that high quality. So those $70, $80 iced out chains that you see from all those Instagram ads that pop up on your feed, they're probably not gonna be made out of real diamonds, right? They're probably cubic zirconia or something along those lines. And a lot of them are also made out of just simple, cheap plated material. So it's not actually solid gold, or it's not even gold vermeil. It's gold plating, which is actually really prone to rubbing off and tarnishing over time. So I didn't really want to fall into either end of the spectrum, and I wanted to create a brand that really did something new and that encompassed the two aspects of our lives, work and play. I could keep getting into this and talking more about the potential of the brand and what we do differently, but again, that would be a different topic for another day. Essentially, you just have to know that I finally found my niche and something I'm truly passionate about and something that I could really be happy about to get out of bed in the morning and work on. And I think that level of passion is definitely necessary if you're in this for the long haul, because at some point, you're gonna face obstacles that maybe have you rethinking, like, why am I doing this, right? Like, why am I fighting this uphill battle? Why am I working through this? And at that point, you really need to be strongly invested in the business, and you have to have a strong reason as to why you wanna see things through, even if things are tough at that moment. So case in point, starting an e-commerce brand is definitely not an easy thing to do. So if you're thinking about starting an e-commerce brand or you're already on the journey, I applaud you for taking the leap and really taking the courage to start something that you can call your own. So hopefully this video was helpful. If you did find it helpful, go ahead and leave a thumbs up on this video, as well as subscribe below to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on the notification bell so that you don't miss any new updates and new videos from me. Also, it's been a minute since I've actually uploaded consistently. I think I never really had a consistent streak of posting for any more than a couple months at a time. I always post a couple videos here and there and then drop off for like 6 months and then post again and drop off. So I definitely want to make this a priority for this year. So you'll be seeing my face a lot more here on this channel throughout 2022. So besides documenting more of my e-commerce brand journey and hopefully sharing some more insights and lessons and challenges with you guys, I definitely also want to get back into creating agency related content as well, because I know a lot of you guys joined this channel in the first place because you found one of my cold emailing videos or something. So I definitely also have a lot of new changes on the horizon for my agency. There's a lot of shifts being done behind the scenes in terms of the services we're offering, as well as just how I want the agency to be positioned in general. And with that comes a big overhaul of my clientele, right? I'll be taking on a lot of different clients now moving forward. And it's just a lot on the horizon, a lot to be excited about, and a lot that I'm also excited to share with my student community and with you guys as well. By the way, before you click off this video, I also wanted to mention that I started up coaching again. There's gonna be a couple spots that I'm offering for people to join my course coaching hybrid. So a big part of it is gonna be the one-on-one sessions that you have with me over Zoom that are gonna be recorded and really just pre-planned carefully so that I'm helping you make the most out of our one-on-one time. So those sessions are super intensive, and we do deep dives into either current issues with your agency or different questions you have, or just to help you clarify some of the concepts taught in the course. And then obviously you get access to the online course as well, which has a bunch of different modules on everything from the hiring process for your agency to figuring out your edge and your main service offering, to actual service delivery stuff as well, to sales, to cold emailing, the whole nine. So the course is really comprehensive, and then you have the one-on-ones on top of that, where I actually go in and screen share different concepts with you, go through some of your client accounts if you want. It's just a very structured way for me to give you my undivided one-on-one attention.
I think step 4 is too much.
Yeah.
For sure. I actually don't tell them ahead of time, like the whole analyst access thing, because I think some brands, if it's not conveyed, and this is why I'm a big proponent of like turning on video as well, so they can like see your tonality and like how genuine you are and stuff like that. But if it's not conveyed in the proper way, and if it's not like led into by like a really good opener, they're gonna find it suspicious that you're not asking for it right away, but you're already warning them that they have to give access. So a lot of companies are kind of cautious about that. So I personally don't even talk about it until I get on a call with them and they can see that I genuinely want to help. Once they get to know me for 10, 15 minutes and they're like, look, this guy really knows his stuff, then they're like, yeah, there's no risk in giving him, our ads manager data.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And this is just kind of bump up again.
So if you want to work with me in any capacity, whether it's coaching consulting if you're an agency owner, or whether you're a potential client and you want me to run your ads for you, go ahead, click the description down below and find the relevant link to book in a call with me, and hopefully we can find a time to chat soon. That's it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.